It's time for the Week 14 Snake Draft. That's right here on the FanDuel Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope channels, getting you set for the Week 14 main slate and going head-to-head as we try to see who is the best snake drafter between the three of us. Welcome on into the Snake Draft Q&A right here on the FanDuel multimedia channels. My name is Jim Sanas. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula and JJ Zachariason. JJ is the editor-in-chief of numberFire and FanDuel. And JJ, Week 14 coming up. You got yourself another win last week. How you doing?
A much-needed W, yes. I think that's either maybe two over the last 3 weeks. I've needed them, though, because I was in last for a while. So I just need to come back and at least make it competitive. So I was very glad that I got that win, even with Miles Sanders, the random panic move of going with Miles Sanders in that draft. He was in my lineup, but I fortunately got the win because last week was pretty tough.
You were scrambling to figure out how many you won in the past 3. I don't need to do that much work to figure out how many I've won in the past 3. I've not won since week 3, so it's been a tough skid. But we have 2 more snake drafts left. We have the one today and the one next week, and the goal of those drafts is to beat Brandon. Brandon Gadula is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, you have yourself a 1-win lead with 2 weeks left to go. How you feeling here?
Well, I mean, I need some help from you. That much is certain. People have been talking about.
I've given you plenty of help this year. Don't you put this on me?
Well, people kept talking about how the Steelers had like the most fraudulent undefeated start in history, and I was like, they haven't heard about Jim's 3-0 start in the snake draft.
Man, owned.
Let me quit. Just, you guys take it from here.
I know, but here's the thing. It's honestly, like, if we're being completely honest about this, it's not like our projections vary that widely, each and every week. It's honestly a statistical anomaly that Jim hasn't won since week 3.
Is it though? Is it?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You're saying it's a statistical anomaly that the guy who said to bet the Chargers over 24 points last week hasn't won since week 3. Are you sure that's an anomaly and not just operator error here?
I mean, we all have bad plays and we have bad pick. I mean, last week I liked Miles Sanders. I mean, that was obviously a terrible, terrible idea and a terrible play. But things still went my way a little bit because I had other guys like a James Robinson, a Dalvin Cook. But that just hasn't come together fully for you. And it's honestly, the variance is unbelievable.
Sure, this is the variance. I'll scream variance as they put me in my grave, and I'll feel great about that for sure. As you can see above, we are once again giving away a ticket into the FanDuel Sunday Million for week number 14. All you got to do to enter is go to the YouTube description. Go to the description there, enter your email. It's a pretty quick, easy way to do it. You've got 12 minutes left to do so. Get yourself in to give yourself a shot at $500,000 in the FanDuel Sunday Million for week number 14. Before we get into this draft here, let's talk about this slate a little bit because it's a 13-game slate, and that does change things. It gives us a lot of options, which is a burden because it means we have to, decide who we want to use, even though there's no Christian McCaffrey anymore. It's still tough to whittle things down. It means we have a lot of high upside quarterbacks on the slate, which was not the case last week. Brandon had said there may not be a quarterback who gets to 30 FanDuel points, and only one did on the entire slate, and that guy was Derek Carr. That's kind of weird how that worked out. But this week we have Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. I think that Tom Brady and Ryan Tannehill have upside as well. So it's a very different slate. JJ, how are you viewing this slate here? Is it a slate where you are building around running backs? What's the main focus for you for DFS in week 14?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of interesting game stacks that we don't, or at least team stacks that we haven't had in the past. I say team stacks because I think that, this is a spot where we could finally see Seattle's passing attack do something that they haven't done since basically week 8. So that's at least attractive, but I think there are some interesting games. Like I really like the Minnesota-Tampa Bay game, 2 teams that run at a pretty fast pace. And then you have, a Tampa Bay rush defense that's been pretty stout. So maybe we don't see Minnesota rely as heavily on the run. I don't think that matters for Dalvin Cook, but, it's just in terms of just their overall philosophy and the way they approach this game. So, yeah, I mean, I see it from the perspective of there are definitely, higher end picks at every position. I think that at wide receiver, it's really tough to not play a Devontae Adams or a Tyreek Hill at this point, given the target shares that they're seeing week in and week out. And the matchups are fine. I mean, Devontae's matchup is really good this week. So obviously you can still go in that direction. And then you have some high-end running backs as well that, like most weeks, we're seeing a cliff, at that position. But there's still some value, which is nice, like a Myles Gaskin, who I liked a lot last week. And, he just couldn't find the end zone on his 69 goal line attempts. But fortunately, hopefully he'll be able to turn that around against Kansas City a bit. So I think it's a better slate overall. There's more options, like you said. I do think in our snake draft, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than usual, not just because there are so many options, but because, we're sifting through and looking at guys who are projected in certain ways. And since there's only 3 of us, our picks come so fast that we really have to scroll through and make sure that we're getting the guy that we want.
Right. Brandon, I think the tough decision for me this week in the snake draft is when you get to the wide receivers, because obviously Derrick Henry, probably the first overall pick, Dalvin Cook is in the mix, but then we also have Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. And I think because of a positional replacement perspective, it makes sense to go with the running backs first, but you could argue that the straight up projection for Dalvin is on par with Devontae and Tyreek Hill, which we don't get out of wide receivers very often. So what's the tipping point for you where we start to value the receivers over the running backs?
Yeah, I mean, for a snake draft, it's honestly, I think at pick 2 where you would consider it, because as much as Dalvin Cook has such a stranglehold on the workload for the Vikings, it's about as tough a matchup as you could ask for with the Buccaneers coming off of a bye. So I think that if I get the second pick, I would consider Devontae there. I would probably lean Dalvin, not that, I don't care if I'm giving out my strategy for the first round, but I was actually thinking with Christian McCaffrey healthy, at least this week, we would all get one of those 3 stud running backs. And obviously we didn't get that. So it does kind of throw a wrench into the mix this week.
It definitely does dilute things a little bit, and that's going to make things tough. But I think that it's nice to have the options. It just means that my brain will hurt a little bit more. All right, so one more time, final mention, get yourself entered in the FanDuel Sunday Million contest by going to the YouTube description over on the YouTube stream for this. But let's get this draft underway. JJ, you are the final one to enter. Get yourself entered, and let's get this puppy underway.
All right, I just entered, and I am the lucky one to get the 3 pick, which I'm not looking forward to right now because it's tough. I mean, it's not easy. So Brandon gets 1, Jim gets 2, I get 3. I might end up playing it kind of safe and splitting it with the positions depending on Yeah.
I'm very annoyed. I did not want to pick second because I was having the same issue as Brandon where I was like, I might go Devontae there.
You're going to have to take – well, you don't have to take Dalvin, but
no, you're right.
You don't want Dalvin to slip.
Right. That's
because then you're gifting Dalvin and –
if I give JJ Dalvin and one of those 2 wide receivers, I'm an idiot. That's
yeah, but then, I mean, you're going to get Dalvin and one of those wide receivers more than likely because I don't want to gift you and Aaron Jones, James. I mean, basically Aaron Jones. That's the main reason why I didn't want the 3 spot is because now you guys are going to be looking really, really good.
Why would bother playing this? I give up already. We haven't even started the draft and I've given up.
Jim's going to win this week. I think Jim's in a good spot.
I don't think Jim's in a good spot. I think Jim's in a terrible spot, and that's the reason he'll lose, but he's going to go Dalvin Cook. How long can I speak in the third person? I will go Dalvin Cook second, though. I had thought about this for a while beforehand and had a 5-minute interval where I was like, okay, I'd go Devontae at pick 2, but I kind of feel like I have to go Dalvin there.
I'm going to go Devontae Adams because he has a much safer floor, I think, even though Tyreek Hill has had a good floor for the most part over the last X weeks. But I'm going to go Devontae. I really am considering Tyreek Hill here, but I might just go with the team stack here and just go with Aaron Jones and hope that they just destroy the Lions.
Oh, I wanted Tyreek Hill so badly. I was sweating that. I think you made the right choice in going Aaron Jones. But I wanted Tyreek Hill so desperately.
I think I think the 3 spot's the worst spot in this draft.
I think the 3 spots, I would agree. But because you kind of don't have a great way to play that. Because like you said, if you take Tyreek, you give me Aaron Jones, and I have Dalvin and Jones. But if you don't take Tyreek, then I get him. So you were kind of in a bad spot there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it worked out well for me, so I'll certainly take that. All right, so. At this pick, I'm going to go Austin Eckler. I know that the projections don't favor him, and I could consider going with a wide receiver like DK Metcalf against the Jets, but I like the workload Eckler's got, and I think the matchup bodes well for his style of play with the targets, so I think that goes well for him there. Brandon, you got Calvin Ridley with no Julio Jones to pair with James Robinson, so the volume for you should be really good in this spot.
Yeah, I got the Derrick Henry, James Robinson stack. This should give me a high floor. And then we've seen Calvin Ridley without Julio Jones get basically as many targets as he can handle, and he gets a lot of downfield work. It's not quite on par with the workload for Tyreek Hill, but I do think that he's probably my wide receiver 3 by a clear margin behind those top 2 with no Julio. No Julio hurts the offense, but his workload can be so good.
Okay, JJ goes Travis Kelce. I was thinking about that too.
I'm going total DGAF in this draft after getting this 3 spot and feeling not great about what would be following to me there. But I'm just going really high upside guys here. I just really think Kelce obviously has that weekly upside, and then Metcalf against this Jets secondary could be awesome. And I figured, you guys already got your running backs. Maybe you get one more, but they're all kind of in the same tier at this point. So I just didn't want to force it.
I took Justin Jefferson there. I just feel really good about that game from a game environment perspective. That's what. Oh no, Brandon! What the heck? Yes. I purposely didn't take Mahomes because I thought that you wouldn't take him.
I could tell.
You monster. Okay, well I have to take Rodgers then because I feel like there's a clear tier between them and the rest of the quarterback. Like, come on.
Call me the combo breaker.
I don't want to be. So here's my logic right now. I think my next highest projected player is Chris Carson in terms of at running back, but I don't want to stack because I'm going to have to go Russ at quarterback to stack him with DK. So I'm going to go Myles Gaskin, and then I'm going to take Russ as my quarterback.
I was hoping for Gaskin with Mahomes, but I thought it was kind of a long shot. But
I am perturbed. I'm going to go David Montgomery as my final pick. Just because he's basically a bell cow facing the Texans. But I don't even want to play this one out because I'm so upset that Brandon took Mahomes. I thought I knew you, only to realize that I have no idea what goes through the brain of Brandon Gadula. And that wraps up the draft. Okay, so I'm dead last in projection because I'm an idiot. And Brandon sucks. Okay, Brandon, talk about your team. I'm not going to tee you up with anything here because I don't care. Just talk about your team, you monster.
All right, so the number 1 pick with Derrick Henry was obvious, and then I could kind of see how the draft was going to unfold based on what we talked about before the show, but also just based on how I had things ranked. And so I was thinking I was going to get James Robinson, and then I didn't really know where I was going to go from there. But I went with the volume and high leverage work for Calvin Ridley. I really like that game. I think I'm higher on that game than some of the other games that everyone's looking at stacking. And then I was able to get Keenan Allen in that same game. So I have 2 game stacks to start off. And then I viewed quarterback as a big drop-off after Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. I knew with Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill off the board that I wasn't going to get one of those 2 if I waited. I wasn't going to get one of those 2 if I waited till the last pick anyway. So I went with Mahomes. I knew it was going to ruin some stacks, but I think that was a pretty obvious pick. I didn't really know what to do with the last flex pick. So I did go with Adam Thielen because his red zone workload is just incredible. I didn't get Dalvin Cook. So in theory, any touchdowns from Thielen hurts Dalvin Cook. So that kind of works in my favor. But I mean, I couldn't really go with someone like Alvin Kamara. I also considered Allen Robinson. But I think that I just went with Thielen for a pretty good game, even though I don't really love the Vikings passing offense that much this week.
I do. I think that I actually like them a lot. I think that it was tough to decide between Jefferson and Thielen, but I knew I wanted one of them just because they get disgusting target shares in a low volume offense, but because the Buccaneers are so good against the rush and because it's possible that Tampa gets out to a lead, I expect the volume to be good, so I wanted a piece of that offense, the passing offense specifically. Wound up going Jefferson by a hair because I think the yardage upside is so good with him, but it was a tough choice for me too. I also think I probably should have gone Keenan over Jefferson because it's a 3-person draft. Jefferson works better for a large field tournament than Keenan, I think, because the ceiling is better. But for this format, I think Keenan was a better pick there. So I like your team quite a bit, despite hating it at the exact same time. Yeah. I'll talk to JJ here about yours. You did get the Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf stack against the Jets. Travis Kelce, like I said at the time, I think was a really good pick because if you look at it,
I was planning on going with him.
Yeah. If you look at scoring, just disregarding position, Kelce has 5 different 20 FanDuel point games so far this year. And I think Tyreek Hill has 3. Don't quote Oh, man. So, like, he's a wide receiver.
Yeah.
What were the big decision points for you here?
Yeah, so I really looked at this as, again, I'm not trying to like just hammer home this point that I think the 3 spot was the worst in this draft, but I do think it was the worst in this draft. But as a result of that, I think that you need to change on the fly and not be as conservative, because I knew that you were going to start with Dalvin and Tyreek, Jim, and then Brandon was going to start with Derrick Henry and James Robinson. And those are both phenomenal first 2 rounds. So to me, I needed to approach this draft in terms of finding different mini stacks. So what I did was I looked at Green Bay. I would not be shocked if they put up a 40 burger plus against Detroit this week. So I went with Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams. And then getting Travis Kelce meant that going with Myles Gaskin made some sense to get that game stack. And then because I had DK Metcalf, I went with Russ because we've at least seen that upside. But then I'm also, getting that quarterback wide receiver stack. So I went with more of a stacking strategy. The last couple of weeks I've definitely been in a better position, so I haven't really cared as much about the correlation. But this week I sort of felt like I needed to care a little bit more, so I went with it.
And I think it makes sense too, because the projection range of outcomes for Russ and DK Metcalf is very good in a 3-person draft, because the concern with them against the Jets is that they will get up by too much, not throw it for the entire game. But like in a 3-person draft, you don't care about that anywhere near as much. You're not looking for 97th percentile outcomes. You're looking for 75th percentile outcomes, and their 75th percentile outcomes are very, very good. So I think it makes sense to go with them there. For me,
it's the only stack out of the 3 too, which is a little scary.
That's definitely
my fault. But
no, I stacked Cook and Jefferson. Come on. How dare you look at this?
Quarterback pass catcher.
When Justin Jefferson throws a touchdown to Dalvin Cook, you'll apologize. I expect
if that happens, we're running this video clip back for eternity.
When that happens is the key word there. It's when.
So to be clear, you're saying it's Justin Jefferson to Dalvin Cook and not Dalvin Cook to Justin
Dalvin
Jefferson?
Cook throws it, I'm wrong.
Okay. Okay. All right.
That's embarrassing if it's Dalvin Cook throwing it. I've just embarrassed myself.
We always see those wide receiver throws to running backs. So.
Yeah. You haven't been grinding Justin Jefferson high school tape for that one time his team threw a gadget play, which probably never happened? Come on, JJ. Get on my level here. For me, I think that this kind of reflected the games that I like the most outside of David Montgomery. I love that Chiefs-Dolphins game, mostly because I think the Dolphins can score points and actually keep this game semi-competitive, which is why Myles Gaskin is such a good play. I think that stacking Mahomes, Hill, or Mahomes, Kelce with Gaskin, it makes a lot of sense. And I think that is a route I'll be doing a lot on Sunday for daily fantasy. Austin Eckler, I just want the targets. I think targets are so valuable on a half PPR site. I know that they're more valuable elsewhere, but the receiving yardage is so good. And Eckler, in the games he's played with Justin Herbert, 122 yards in scrimmage per game, including that game last week where they got totally wiped. So I loved Eckler. I thought that was a pretty easy pick for me. As far as Montgomery goes, I think that I could have gone Mike Evans potentially to get the game stack there with Cook and Justin Jefferson, but the hamstring injury did scare me. I didn't feel good enough about Chris Godwin or Antonio Brown to go there. So that's a push me towards Montgomery versus going with another wide receiver. That was kind of the one tough choice there. And Aaron Rodgers, I know is tilting because I didn't get the stack, but Rodgers is still a very good quarterback play. I think that I'd agree with Brandon's assessment where there's a clear tier drop-off after those two guys, and I felt good at still getting Rodgers, even though I desperately did want the stack there. We have our winner for the Week 14 FanDuel Sunday Million giveaway. It is, I'm just going to say this, I don't actually know how to pronounce this. It's a Joel Long. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but whatever. You are our winner for the Week 14 FanDuel Sunday Million ticket. I believe you'll get an email to notify you. Congratulations. Use it well. Make smart stacks and play responsibly. And hopefully we can talk to you $500,000 richer for next week's snake draft. Let's dive into
stacks like Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook, right?
Again, I'm doing it for the double dip. Just when it happens, please apologize. I expect at least 3 tweets apologizing. No more, no less. Strawberry, this one is for JJ. Nelson Aguilar, Colin Johnson, or Russell Gage. We are scraping the bottom of the barrel here. Aguilar gets good usage. Colin Johnson is good at football, I think. Gage,
you're Stan.
Russell Gage benefits from Julio being out. Preference for you between those 3? I
think Gage probably has the floor there. I would probably lean his way. I I don't really love Russell Gage. I think he's overrated because there's sort of this like anchoring bias because early in the season he had that decent game. I think it was week 1 against Seattle. And then since then people are like, oh, Russell Gage is he has a ceiling, but he really doesn't every week. But I do think that he's probably the play of those three without Julio.
Yeah, I like Aguilar a lot for DFS, so I might go that way, but I think that Gage does benefit for sure. It has a better floor. Like, that's
right.
Sure. And like this is season long, you're thinking floor there for sure.
I would say though, I think you're right. If you are an underdog and you need more of a ceiling, I don't mind Aguilar.
Also, Mike Glennon, please keep throwing to Colin Johnson. Let's do it. Guy, this one is also for JJ. Sammy Watkins or Antonio Brown, and they note that their opponent has Patrick Mahomes. Would you go Watkins or Antonio Brown there?
I'm going Antonio Brown there. I like that game. I mean, I like both of these games. Don't get me wrong. But I've mentioned this on our waiver wire show, Jim, a couple of times. But it's really just one down game for AB that we saw. And then they had that bye week. But right before their bye week, he didn't have a great game. If you look at I think it was 3 games before that with AB, he was matching everything that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were doing from a target share standpoint, from a deep ball standpoint. All of it. He just didn't have a great game this past. I guess it was against Kansas City. So to me, AB is the answer there, and I think he has both the floor and the ceiling.
I'd agree with that for sure. And it's also just it's a really, I know that the Chiefs game is fun, but like that one's pretty fun as well. Better matchup for him too. Joe is asking Aaron Jones or Dalvin Cook. I know someone here said Aaron Jones. I would actually go Dalvin there. I know the matchup does not favor Dalvin Cook, but the workload is so much better that I don't honestly care all that much. Like, I think when the workload discrepancy is as large as it is, give me the guy with the better workload over the guy in the better environment, and that is Dalvin Cook. I know that, like, it's a bad matchup. It is the worst possible matchup for a running back, but I think with his workload, it doesn't matter. So I would still go Dalvin Cook there personally. Philip is asking, Jonnu or Schultz and Hurts or Stafford playing backups. Okay, so JJ, at tight end, would you go with Jonnu Smith or Dalton Schultz?
I'm just wearing a blindfold. I'm putting 2 of them on my wall, and I'm throwing a dart and seeing which one it goes to, because that's really what you're working with here. I mean, Jonnu has not done anything since like week 5, and so he's hard to trust. I guess he probably has a little bit more touchdown upside, just given the environment, the offensive environment and the matchup in general. So I'd probably go Jonnu, and then the other one was Hurts or Stafford.
Yeah.
To me, it's easily Stafford. I like that matchup a lot. In general, I think that game could shoot out. Last week we finally saw, 2019 Matthew Stafford chucking it deep. He had 31% of his attempts this past week go 15 plus air yards. And it just so happened to be the first game that Matt Patricia was no longer the head coach. I don't think that's just a coincidence. So I really like Stafford. I think that that game, like I said, could be fairly high scoring.
Adrian Peterson said today that he football was fun again with Matt Patricia being gone.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Never laughed harder than seeing that answer. I love the honesty. I appreciate it for sure.
He doesn't care anymore.
Brandon, I'm going to ask you this one. I'm also going to answer it. But Derek is wondering about the best low-rostered stacks of Week 14. My favorite one here is Tom Brady to Mike Evans. Evans had that hamstring scare, but sounds like he's good to go, and that gives me more confidence. And like his workload was really, really good before their bye week. In the 4 games with Antonio Brown being there, I think he had like 33% of the deep targets and 40-something% of the red zone targets. Like, that's awesome in a good game against a bad secondary. So I think that Tom Brady with Mike Evans is my favorite. Brandon, if you're looking for a contrarian stack, where are you looking in Week 14?
I think there's a lot of ways to be contrarian without being too weird this week, because we have, as we've been mentioning, Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers being easily the top 2 quarterbacks. But one place I'm looking to, and this isn't necessarily the most sneaky thing, but I like Justin Herbert in a bounce back after being just embarrassed last week. I think people tend to react to that too much, more than they should. He doesn't get to play bottom tier defenses very often. Atlanta's not a good pass defense, but you can't really run on them. So I like Herbert, and I like Keenan Allen. He has upside because of his target share. He's the one guy that Herbert keeps going to. Mike Williams is sort of fallen off. So I think Herbert and Keenan are a pretty sneaky stack, and then you can run it back with the Russell Gage or Calvin Ridley. And by playing 3 of those guys, I think it's a pretty unique way to approach it.
Yeah, I think that's smart. To go back to the the Chargers after what happened last week. I think that makes a lot of sense here. All right, this one is for JJ from Ingolf 1. Full point PPR, need 2 from J.K. Dobbins, Miles Sanders, and Kareem Hunt. So all guys who at least get some work, but all of them definitely have flaws as well. So J.K. Dobbins against the Browns, Miles Sanders against the Saints, or Kareem Hunt against the Ravens on Monday Night Football.
We're choosing 2 here, though?
Yep.
I am benching Miles Sanders.
Yep.
I don't know how you can trust him after seeing Jordan Howard get the work there. I mean, look, Jordan Howard didn't get amazing work, but he got enough work to just be annoying, right? And that combined with, New Orleans being as good as they are. New Orleans hasn't given up a single RB1 performance this season. They're the best performer. The last time they gave up anything really was DeAndre Swift back in like week 4 or 5. So I'm really not that high on Miles Sanders. A lot of ambiguity too with Jalen Hurts under center. Kareem Hunt's fine enough. I'm not super high on him. J.K. Dobbins is fine enough. I'm not super high on him either. But I think both of those guys have a much better outlook to see like 80 yards total than Miles Sanders.
Yeah, Miles Sanders' output ever since Doug Peterson said they wanted to mix in more backs has been really, really bad. And that offense this week's probably going to be really, really bad. One-Eyed Jack, who is ready for Rojo to be the top back on the slate? I will vomit Jack if that happens. Just putting that out there right now. Samir is asking, we'll go with JJ for this one. The Seahawks defense or the Bucks defense this week? The Seahawks get the Jets. So
it's the Seahawks. Yeah, and the Seahawks continue to have a good schedule, basically through the season. So hold on to them. Keep riding them.
Question here from Bethany. She says, apologies for the start sit. That's okay. We do have JJ back on Sunday to answer more start sit, but we'll take this one here because it's a Friday. Why not? If you had to play one of Zeke, Miles, Hunt, or Mostert in half PPR, which one? I feel like I'm going Zeke here because he's facing the Bengals. He's still getting volume. He's not doing well with said volume, but like at some point it's the Bengals. So I feel like I'd probably go Zeke here. Zeke or Mostert? I feel like those are the main 2 ones.
The thing is, though, you can't trust Raheem Mostert with the way they're using their backfield right now. I mean, in that, in a season long, when you have Zeke sitting there seeing all that work, I think Zeke is the play.
All right, I want to get this one from Alvin because I think it's a really fun one. Favorite players you'll try to pair in one lineup. We could take this from a stacking perspective, but I want to take it a different way. I talked about this earlier, but I think that the Patrick Mahomes with Tyreek Hill with Myles Gaskin stack is a really fun one because I think the Dolphins will score points. If Myles Gaskin does well, the odds that the Chiefs have to put up a lot of points goes higher. So I think that game stack bodes really well. I also like one, Brandon was talking about liking that Raiders-Chargers game quite a bit. I think that a pairing of Austin Eckler with Calvin Ridley works out pretty well, not because they will go overlooked, but because I think or at least Eckler is undersalaried. I thought Julio was undersalaried before he got ruled out, but I think that one works. Brandon, optimal pairings for you. I think this is it's partly a stacking question, but also like a game stacking question here.
Yeah, I think that the Chargers-Falcons game is really easy because if that game blows up, we know kind of who it's going to go through. So I already said, Keenan, Herbert, Ridley. I know I said that's possibly low owned, but sometimes spending up is a way to be contrarian. I would also look at the Titans-Jaguars game with something like Derrick Henry, DJ Chark. I think that's going to be a very common pairing for me because DJ Chark's salary is $5,900. Had 7 targets last week, just 2 catches, but 5 of his targets were at least 16 yards downfield. There's a lot of leverage there, and he's very good. So I think if that game sort of blows up, those 2 would be very involved in that.
I actually think too in that Jags Titans game, you could sort of, when we look at these game totals or games that we think that are going to blow up in some way, generally we're saying, they're the Titans are 7.5 point favorites. Obviously Derrick Henry's going to have a good game, but touchdowns have variance, right? Yeah. So there's a chance that Ryan Tannehill gets a lot of those touchdowns. So going with a Tannehill, AJ Brown type stack or Corey Davis, and then running it back with James Robinson makes a lot of sense too to me.
Well, I'd go Corey Davis, honestly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But that was when we talked about on Thursday too on the Heat Check was Ryan Tannehill, Corey Davis, and then Dalvin Cook because you're getting the lower roster exposure to the Titans offense, but then also getting the lower roster stud running back. I know the matchup is very bad, and that does mean we should be lower on Dalvin Cook than we'd be in any other matchup, but I'm still going to be high on Dalvin Cook. I think that that workload can do well against anyone. We saw McCaffrey get 20 points against them. Alvin Kamara got 20 points against them. Christian McCaffrey left that game early and still got 22 points. Kamara does not have a workload as good as Dalvin Cook, so you can do well against them if you have good enough usage, and Dalvin Cook does. So I think Tannehill, Dalvin, Davis, Chark, let's fire, Alvin. Let's do that one.
And with 13 games, I know like some of our sort of off the radar or under the radar stacks have been fairly obvious, but there are 13 games. You don't have to like stack Washington and San Francisco to be a little bit unique. Stacking the games a little bit more. Right. So I feel bad saying like Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert is maybe.
They got shut out last week, dude. You're good.
Right.
Like,
so I think there are ways to be different without being.
Like this is, it's not like an 8-game slate where you have to go like Teddy Robbie because the Denver secondary is so decimated. I mean, it's just no reason whenever there's so many good plays on the slate.
Don't you tempt me with Teddy Bridgewater.
I mean, you play Robbie for sure, but
and Curtis Samuel.
And Curtis Samuel. Yeah, I like Curtis Samuel too.
They're RB1. Too quick for JJ here before we close up. Kiki or AB? We mentioned we like Antonio Brown. Do we like him more than Kiki?
Oh man, that's really, really tough. I would definitely ask me this weekend. I'd probably lean AB, but ask me this weekend too. Jump into that chat on Sunday morning.
Kiki Cutie at $5,600 on FanDuel is a great play this week. Final one. This one is from Samir. He apologizes, JJ. So, take this. It's a rough one, but we got to get Samir this playoff win. Duke Johnson, Chase Edmonds, Peyton Barber, or Miles Sanders?
Man, so David Johnson might not play because so if he doesn't play, I'd play Duke.
If Kenyon Drake, I haven't seen an updated injury report from the Cardinals. Drake was limited on Thursday. If Drake is out, you go Edmonds. I have not seen an update on that, though.
Here's the other. I'm actually intrigued by Edmonds, too, from like a season-long perspective because the Giants have been really bad against receiving running backs this year. They've given up the second most receptions of the position and the second highest percentage of receiving yards allowed have gone to the position. There's some noise in that kind of data, but Chase Edmonds, his target share hasn't really changed that much since Kenyon Drake came back. They're just throwing to running backs a little bit more. Maybe it's Kyler's shoulder. Maybe it's not, whatever. But they are. But I still think you probably go Duke because it does sound like David Johnson's not going to go. And then if David Johnson does for some reason go, I mean, is it Miles? I think it might be Miles.
I think it is Miles.
Yeah.
Like you lower him, but you can only lower him so much. That is all the time that we have here for today. As mentioned, this is our second to last snake draft of the year. We'll have one again next week at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Friday. But also before then, we have JJ answering start-sit questions at noon Eastern on Sunday, and then also our waiver wire Q&A coming up next Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope channels. Get those questions in and get notifications as we go live each and every week, 3 times per week here for the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. Thank you to Brandon and JJ for joining me here today. I am at Jim Sonis saying so long for today. Good luck to you, whether it be the season-long playoffs, Dynasty, Best Ball, or in DFS. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Snake Draft Q&A.